known as the CPM method, also known as critical path analysis. CPA consists in using the CPM formula and the network diagram to visually represent the task sequence of a project. Once this task sequence or paths are defined, the duration is calculated to identify the critical path. Critical path. It is the entire path of a project, from start to finish, going all of the critical and non-critical tasks. As it identifies the task, it also notes the amount of time necessary to finish each activity in the project as a whole. Why is it called critical path? Critical path or path is the longest path of time from start to finish. It indicates the minimum time necessary to complete the entire project.
As you can see, there are 3 steps by constructing a critical path. First, we constructing a project network doing forward and backward passes. The second one, determine the project completion time. And last, determine the project completion time, calculating the slack values, and finally stating the critical path. Formula or guide na tinatawag natin para sa pagkuha ng critical path method. T is to represent the activity time. ES is the earliest start time. EF the earliest finish time. And LF the latest start time. And LF the latest finish time. So yung magagamit natin yan para sa pagkuha o mapadali yung computation natin sa critical path method. So ayun, dito makikita natin yung formula na binigay kanina para mapadali yung computation sa critical path method. Then dito makikita natin yung activity, procedure, and the duration time. Dito sa activity, meron tayong A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and I. Then sa procedure naman, dito yung mga needs dito sa left side, yung mga activity. Then dito makita natin yung duration time, which is 5, 10, 13, 7, 3, 9, 4, 3, and 7. So mag-start po tayo dito sa A. Then start with A. B needs A, C needs A, D needs B, E needs B, F needs C, G needs E and D, H needs E and F, and I needs H and G. So yung ibig sabihin, yung I, ayun yung magiging finish or last duration natin. Matapos natin gawin yung guide kanina, so ito na yung magiging bar para makuha yung forward and backward passes or yung slack or tinatawag natin critical path method.
Forward pass. Activity A. As the first activity in the project, its early start is set to 0 because it can begin immediately. The early finish for activity A is calculated by its duration to its early start, giving us EF equal ES plus duration, equivalent 0 plus 5 equals 5. Activity B. Activity B can begin as soon as activity A finish. Therefore, its early start is the same as early finish of activity A, which is 5. The early finish for activity B is calculated by adding its duration to its early start, giving us EF equal ES plus duration, equivalent 5 plus 10 equals 15. Activity C, similar to activity B, the earliest activity C can start is when activity A finishes, so its early start is also 5. The early finish for activity C is calculated by adding its duration to its early start, giving us EF equal ES plus duration, equivalent of 5 plus 13 equals 18. Activity Activity D depends on the completion for activity B. So, early start is the same as early finish of activity B, which is 15. The early finish for activity D is calculated by adding its duration to its early start, giving us EF equals ES plus duration, equivalent of 15 plus 7 equals 22. Activity E. Activity E can begin as soon as activity B finishes. So its early start is also 15. The early finish for activity E is calculated by adding its duration to its early start, giving us activity F giving us EF equal ES plus duration equal 15 plus 13 equals 18. Activity F. Activity F depends on the completion of activity C. So its early start is the same as early finish of activity C, which is 18. The early finish of activity F is calculated by adding its duration to its early start, giving us EF equal ES plus duration, equivalent of 18 plus 9 equals 27. Activity G. Activity G depends on both activities D and E. Therefore, its early start is the maximum of early finishes of activity D and E, which are 22 and 18, respectively. Hence, ES equals max equals 22. The early finish for activity G is calculated by adding its duration to its early start, giving us EF equals ES plus duration, equivalent of 22 plus 4 equals 26. Activity H. Activity H depends on both activities E and F, so its early start is the maximum of early finishes of activities E and F, which are 18 and 27, respectively. Hence, ES equals max equals 27. The early finish EF for activity H is calculated by adding its duration to its early start, giving us EF equal ES plus duration, 27, equivalent 27 plus 3 equals 30. Activity I. Activity I depends on both activities G and H. Therefore, its early start is the maximum of early finishes of activities G and H, which are 26 and 30, respectively. Hence, ES equal max equal 30. The early finish for activity I is calculated by adding its duration to its early start, giving us EF equal ES plus duration, equivalent of 30 plus 7 equals 37. Backward pass naman. Activity I, recent activity is the last activity in the project. Its late finish is the same as early finish, which is 37. The late start for activity I is calculated as LS equal LF minus duration, equivalent of 37 minus 7 equals 30. Activity H. The late finish for activity H is the minimum of the late start of its immediate successors, which are activity I and G. Since both activities I and G have late start of 30, the late finish of activity H is also 30. The late start for activity H is calculated as LS minus LF minus duration, equivalent of 30 minus 33 minus equivalent of 30 minus 3 equals 27. The late finish for activity G is the minimum of the late start of its immediate successor, which is activity I with late start of 30. The late start for activity G is calculated as LS equal LF minus duration, equivalent of 30 minus 4 equals 26. Activity F. The late finish for activity F is the late start of its immediate successor, which is activity H with late start of 27. The late start for activity F is calculated as LS equal LF minus duration, equivalent of 27 minus 9 equal 18. The late activity E. The late finish for activity E is the late start of its immediate successor, which is activity H with late start of 27. The late start for activity E is calculated as LS equal LF minus duration, equivalent of 27 minus 3 equal 24. Activity D. The late finish for activity D is the late start of its immediate successor, which is activity G with the late start of 26. The late start for activity D is calculated as LS equal LF minus duration, equivalent of 26 minus 7 equals 19. Activity C. The late finish for activity C is the late start of its immediate successor, which is activity F with late start of 18. The late start for activity C is calculated as LS equal LF minus duration, equivalent of 18 minus 13 equal 5. Activity B. The late finish for activity B is late start of its immediate successor, which activity D with a late start of 19. The late start for activity B is calculated as LS equal LF minus duration, equivalent of 19 minus 10 equal 10. Activity A. The late finish for activity A is the minimum of the late start of its immediate successor, which are activity B and C, with late start of 9 and 5, respectively. Therefore, LF equal minimum equals 5. The late start for activity A is calculated as LS equal LF minus duration, equivalent of 5 minus 5 equals 0. These calculations are crucial for determining the critical path and understanding the flexibility or float available for each activity within the project. They provide valuable insight into the scheduling and management of project activities to ensure timely completion. Thank you po.